Force will be with you always.
When Star Wars was made 20 years ago, director George Lucas's vision was limited by the technology available. That's all changed now, and in restoring the trilogy, he's finally been able to realize his dreams.
This is it.
The digital technology frees you up, especially in a fantasy film like this, in ways that are basically overwhelming. You could think of things, and you can write things in science fiction and fantasy, but it's very hard to make that literal.
George had very specific shots that he wanted to be able to achieve, but it was extremely difficult to do that with models on wires. It was impossible then with motion capture to actually get really quick pans. You know, they had to be separate shots. The models couldn't fly directly over the head of a camera without seeing how that it was shaky. And so although for us, when we first saw it, it was still powerful, it was still big, he never got visually the dynamic shots that he actually wanted to get. So we've redone those. Now you can actually see them. They come straight over camera, they go underneath camera, and we can pan with them. That was a real challenge, but a really a great deal of fun to do.
Mos Eisley Spaceport. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
And Mos Eisley was one of the scenes that actually prompted this whole adventure of redoing the movie. I couldn't make it into this bustling spaceport that it was supposed to be. It looked like a little tiny town because I only had like a half a street to shoot on and no real special effects or matte paintings to work with. So I've added a few scenes, and at the same time I've taken a lot of the special effects shots that weren't really as good as I'd hoped they would be because they were sort of prototype technology, and I've been able to improve them and just add that little difference, which is, for me, what makes a shot special.
There's been some attempts we've been making just to see how far we can push sort of the digital backlot idea, that we can do more and more work with synthetic sets. And we're refining the technology to make, you know, characters and creatures look more realistic than they have before.
The idea of digital backlot is best illustrated by Mos Eisley. Miniatures and blue screen actors are photographed separately, then digitally removed from their surroundings. They're then composited to the photographed miniature. Through computer graphics, elements such as this speeder bike are created and added to the composite, along with other digital elements like Gluck's land speeder and the Ronto creature. These Jawas on top of the creature put the final touches to the scene.
Things that would occur to George that might make a moment a little different or might open up a sequence a little more, let the audience see something they hadn't seen before, and just in general to kind of add a new twist to a moment or extend a moment a little more. Those shots tended to be the ones that required a new shot from scratch, like the arrival at Mos Eisley and the Falcon's arrival in Cloud City and opening up the singing number in Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi hosts a wide variety of exotic and bizarre creatures from throughout the galaxy. Nowhere is this better seen than in Jabba's palace, with an out-of-this-world band and a singer named Cy Snoodles.
Originally, George envisioned a large musical number at the very beginning in Jabba's palace, but the state-of-the-art animatronics had only reached a certain level. And although there were a lot of characters, none of them could really quite move properly. Cy Snoodles couldn't really open her mouth. She couldn't lip sync properly. Her eyes didn't move. It was, it was a very complex creature to develop. And I think this gave us the opportunity to actually open that up.
There was a stage built over here at ILM where we shot the plate photography for the new footage. And then we eventually put our CG characters into that.
By making them computer graphics, we're able to get them to get up and sing and dance a little more than they were able to first time around.
We've added one new character that they didn't have the time to actually develop on the third film, a Yazam. And he acts as a counterpoint to Cy, and they have a little duet. And now it's just a fun musical number.
Another character receiving a digital makeover was mentioned but mysteriously absent from the first film. Jabba the Hutt made his debut in Return of the Jedi as a massive mechanical slug requiring 6 operators. Scripted to appear in the first film, scenes were shot with a stand-in actor for Jabba. The plan was to replace him in post-production with a stop-motion puppet.
The Jabba the Hutt scene with Han Solo, part of it was that we ran out of time. Part of it was that ILM had so much pressure on them to do so many shots in such a limited amount of time. It became apparent very early on there was no way to put a big stop-motion special effects sequence in the middle of the movie.
It was a scene that didn't need to be in the film if only the first film was going to be completed. And of course, he had no idea that the film would be successful, so that he would be allowed to finish the second and third chapter of the film. So once he was able to do it, then it became an important scene to put back because it was an introduction to Jabba.
Solo!
Right here, Jabba. Been waiting for you.
Have you not?
You didn't think I was gonna run, did you?
This is the original plate that George shot. So the plan was for us to remove this actor and replace him with Jabba. He had to be physically in that space where this actor was, doing all the same things in a similar kind of style. The ultimate goal is to make it look like Jabba was on the set talking to Harrison Ford, and we just photographed it.
This project here was about 5 shots. It took about a year to do. We took the picture of some of the stuff we found. We used some of the off-the-shelf software to build a 3-dimensional wireframe mesh. This is kind of equated with taking a canoe without a canvas and building the rungs of the canoe and then wrapping it with canvas. And then the next process is actually paint the creature. And with the painting of the creature, it also involves the actual texture of the surface of the characters.
After the modelling and lighting of the computer-generated character is complete, the task of moving this once-immovable slug created a new set of challenges.
The actual motion of Jabba never really existed before. Even in the rubber manifestation in the third one, there was a real sarcasm about him, even though he didn't really move that much. Over time, it became evident that the mass of the character would allow us to make him move like a sea lion. We had to slim it down to convince the audience that it actually had the ability to move. Over a span of how many years, when he makes it to the third one, he gained an enormous amount of weight, from eating some of those greasy little frogs.
We got to a certain point where everything was set, but there was one problem. Han Solo walks around Jabba, and Jabba had not been designed yet. Of course, this stuff was shot 20 years ago, and we were stuck.
Not only did I have to get Jabba close to him, who had a larger mass than this character, we had to somehow shift Han. It would have been literally impossible for him to walk behind the Jabba character because of the tail. So George had the idea, so why don't you have him step on his tail?
Even I get bored sometimes. You think I had a choice?
It's not just a scene about digitally replacing, a placement actor with a CG character. It's also a scene now that actually shows the dynamics between the two of them and their relationship. And it's a very funny little moment.
Jabba, you're a wonderful human being.
Bosca.
George Lucas is already at work on another trilogy. It'll tell the story of Luke's father, Anakin Skywalker, his rise to Jedi knighthood, and his fall to the power of the dark side.
How did my father die?
A young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father.
To watch somebody fall from grace at the level at which Anakin does is going to be extremely painful and yet illuminating for all of us.
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
I've been writing the last 2 years. We've got a lot of designs done. We're doing casting. We're building sets. It's all moving along. And now I'm going back to direct again, but it's been 20 years.
Beyond the special effects and sounds that have become so familiar to us, it's clear that Star Wars has a special place in movie history. For some people, it's a classic adventure story, beautifully told. For others, it's shown that there are no limits to the imagination. For the rest of us, well, it's just the sheer fun of the ride. But whatever the reason, one thing is for sure. For 2 generations, Star Wars will always be part of their most cherished movie memories. And with the promise of chapters yet to come, the adventure is far from over. May the Force be with you.